A few miles outside Chicago, there is a city called Justice. It is a town of 12,500 people and host to one of the most famous ghosts in Illinois. Her name is Resurrection Mary. Located in Justice is Resurrection Cemetery, said to be one of the most haunted places in America. Strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena have been seen and experienced there since the 1930s. Stories tell of people picking up a young female hitchhiker with blonde hair and blue eyes wearing a white dress while driving along Archer Avenue between Willowbrook Ballroom and Resurrection Cemetery. She asks to be let out, only to disappear not long after. The first well-known story of Resurrection Mary happened in 1939. Chicago cab driver Jerry Paulus picked up a blonde woman outside the gates of the cemetery. He was captivated by her beauty and asked her on a date, which the two would have at the Liberty Grove and Hall. They would enjoy the evening, getting to know each other, and share a kiss before he took her back home. She would instead ask to be dropped off on Archer Road. Back at the cemetery, once they arrived, she opened the door and disappeared. Spurred on to find out more about her, he went to where she said she lived. In the middle of the night, he knocked on the door of the house, to which Mary's mother answered. He asked about Mary, even telling her mother of the wonderful time the two had. This is when Mary's mother broke the news to him. She told Paul that Mary had died 5 years before. Paul himself would say,
"It was then that I understood why the woman I was dancing with all night was ice cold to the touch. I had worked in a funeral home for a while, and it was the touch of a corpse."
Sightings would continue from 1973 to 1989. Cars were said to hit or nearly hit Mary as she stood in the cemetery's road. She disappeared after the drivers got out of their vehicles. August 1976. Two police officers were in the area of the cemetery. While on their patrol, they saw someone inside the cemetery's gates and figured the person had been locked in. They contacted the caretaker. They left for a few moments, but after returning, the person was gone, and a pair of handprints burned into two bent bars. Police have stated that the bars were bent because of a truck crashing into the fence, not the paranormal. On January 31st, 1979, columnist Bill Geist reported the story of a cab driver named Ralph who encountered Mary. Ralph picked up a young woman near a small shopping center on Archer Avenue. He would explain his story.
"A couple miles up Archer there, she jumped with a start like a horse and said, 'Here, here.' I hit the brakes. I looked around and didn't see no kind of house. 'Where?' I said. And then she sticks out her arm and points across the road to my left and says, 'There.' And that's when it happened. I looked to my left, like this, at this little shack. And when I turned around, she was gone. Vanished. And the car door never opened. May the good Lord strike me dead. It never opened."
Claire Rudnicki would claim to have seen Mary in 1980. Claire and her husband were driving by when they drove past Mary. The two decided to turn around and ask if she needed some help, but by the time they returned, she was gone.
was any ghost. You hear these stories and these old ghost tales, but it's never happened to me. I must say I think I'm changing my mind. I was looking out the window as we were going down the street, and there was a girl walking on the right-hand side of the road. She was bright, very bright, like illuminating. She was just walking very slowly. I remember thinking, oh my God, it's Resurrection Mary, and I can feel my stomach starting to turn. I was very frightened, I have to admit. It did scare me.
She would state. 9 years later, in October 1989, Janet Kalal and her friend also claimed to have seen Mary. She remembered a woman dressed in white stepping in front of the car and hitting her, despite no feeling of impact. It is believed that Resurrection Mary is that of Mary Brightovy. In 1934, on the evening she died, she and her boyfriend had been dancing at the O. Henry Ballroom. Later that evening, the two got into an argument and Mary left. She was walking on Archer Avenue when she was hit and killed. The driver was never found. After being found by her parents, she would be buried in Resurrection Cemetery in a white dress. Who is Resurrection Mary? A spirit of a young woman looking for someone to take her home, unfortunately never able to? Or is she a series of people playing a joke, dressing throughout the ages as her, and waiting for someone to come along just to be pranked by them? How would her sudden disappearance be explained? Should you ever find yourself driving by the cemetery and see a woman standing there, you might have just seen Resurrection Mary. And if you pick her up, tell her Creepy says hello. I'm Creepy the Cryptid, and I hope you will join me next time for another episode. And remember to look around the corner, because you never know what's lurking in the darkness.